Hello and welcome back to ISpeakSpokeSpoken. My name is James, a native English speaker and an English teacher, and I'll be teaching you about the differences between whose, whom, and who. And these are very similar words in English. Look, you can see how close they are in sound, but they have some different meanings. So firstly, let's begin by saying these words. So if you want to follow, say whose, whose. Your lips should be pushing forward. Whose, whose. And you'll see that on all of these. Whom, whom, whom. Very good. And so the only difference here is the M and the E here. So, and the S and the M, and the S and the E and the O and the M. So there we go. So next up we have who. Who. Lovely. So there we go. Let's see what else we have here. So they often look very similar, but we have some differences. So how do we understand who? Who is quite similar to some personal pronouns here, maybe some subjects in a sentence. So he, she, and they. Who is that? And then maybe you say, who is that? It is him. Who is like one of these, and that is how you can remember it. Is like who, he, who is like this. So the person who is doing the action. So who is doing the action? It is him over there. And that is how you can remember that one. Let's have a look at a couple of examples here. So who is going to the store? Who is going to the store? So who is doing the thing of going to the store? So who is the subject? Who is going? And that is an important one to remember because some of the other ones are different parts of a sentence. So remember, who is the subject here? Who is going to the store? And can you repeat the word store? Store. Remember, it's not store, it's store. Nice one. And remember, if you go up to the top right-hand corner of the video, you can click the link up there and you'll see everything that you can see behind me on the board here. And there is also a quiz up there that you can do and send us the results of that down in the comments and let us know how you do. Also, you can get the same link down in the description below, so don't worry if it disappears up there too before you get the time to actually get it. So let's go back. So next up we have who. Do you know who called me last night? So can you say no? No. Fabulous. So what you're asking, who did the action of calling? Who called? You see how you could replace this with he called me last night or she called me last night? You can use who instead when you're asking about who it was. And you would answer the question who with him, her, it, me, us, and them. So you can answer it with those. So do you know who called me last night? It was him. Do you know who called me last night? It was her. Do you know who called me last night? It was us. Do you know who called me last night? It was it. It called you last night. Do you know who called me last night? It was them. So you can use these to answer that question. So yes, so do you know who did the action of calling? Remember, who is doing an action? So who made this beautiful painting? So what is who doing? What is the action here? Who is making? Can you say made? Made? Fabulous, good job. Who made this beautiful painting? And then an answer might be, it was him, or it was her. Or you might say, he made the beautiful painting if you wanted to recreate the sentence again and replace who with the subject that you want to say instead. Lovely. So yeah, so who is the one performing, as it says here, the action. They are going, they are calling, they are making. and so on and so forth. And that is how you can use who in a sentence. You can use who to talk about who is doing this action and who is that. And you can replace who with I, you, he, she, it, we, and they. So next up, we're going to be talking about whom. Whom is a little bit different here. So whom is the object pronoun. So it refers to the object of a verb or preposition. So it means the person who is receiving the action. So whom did you invite to the party? So let's see. So whom did you invite? So does this mean that this person is the person inviting? No, it means that this person is being invited. This person had the invitation given to them. So the person who gave the invitation was you. You is the pronoun. It's the personal pronoun. So you is the subject here. Whereas whom, you're asking about whom was invited, who received that. Okay, let's look at the next one. The author whom I met at the conference signed my book. So in this one, okay, the author did the meeting, but what we are actually talking about here is how this person met the author. So we're saying the author whom I met. So the author was met. That is what happened. She or he was met. It happened to them. So the author whom I met at the conference signed my book. Very good. Let's look at the last one here. To whom should I address the letter? So here we are talking about, once again, I is our subject, but whom is the person who the letter is being addressed to. I is the one addressing the letter, you see, whereas whom is the one receiving that. So if someone is on the receiving end of an action, then we will use whom. So you can remember it in that way. Lovely. So whom is not doing the action, but the recipient of the action was invited, he met, and he was addressed. So he was invited, he was met, and he was addressed. It happened to him. Just remember that. Lovely. So remember now whose. This is where we are. This is where we're going to move on to now. Whose. When do we use whose? We use whose quite similarly to how we would use his, her, its, their. And the way that we use them is when we're saying that someone owns something. It shows ownership, right? So this is how we ask who owns that thing, you see? So we might say, whose car is this? So we're going to ask about who owns this car, but a better way of saying that is whose car is this? Fabulous. So here are some examples of whose in sentences. Whose book is this? So you're asking, to who does this book belong? And in some languages, you may use to who does this book belong? And you may use different sentence structures to say this, but in English, we use whose. We create this sentence to say, he owns this. We don't use the book is of his or it of him. We say the book is his. So you might say, whose book is this? You see? Next up, she is the one whose proposal was accepted. So it was her proposal who was accepted. She wasn't the one receiving the proposal, because then you would say, to whom was the proposal to? Here you would say she is the one whose proposal was accepted, you see. Can you say proposal? Can you repeat that word? Proposal. Fabulous, good job. All right, I've just covered the next one, so let's do that. Next up, we say, I met a man whose brother works in your company. So here, the man whose brother. So in this term, we're not asking about who it is. We already know it's the man. We already know it's the man's, but we can put this next to I met a man to state that it is his. So you can say, I met a man whose brother. So you're saying that he has a brother. So a man whose brother. So this is how you make this kind of sentence when you're stating that someone has something and you already know who it is. So I met a man whose brother. You're not saying I met a man's brother. You're not saying you met his brother. You met him and he has a brother who works in your company. Perfect. So whose is used to show something that belongs to. So the book is his. The proposal is his. And the proposal and the brother is his. So it depends on who it is. If you know the person, and you can also use it if you don't know the person as well. Now we have some tips on how to remember the differences between who and whom. And these are some good tips for you to remember. So remember that when we have who, you can replace it with he or she or I, you, they, any of these subject pronouns here, you see. You can add this as the subject of a sentence. So who, he is tall. Who is tall? You might ask this question. Lovely. Next up, you may use whom instead of him or her, because you're talking about someone else. You're saying, whom is the book addressed to? So it is addressed to him. It is addressed to her. Something like this. So that is a good way to remember the differences between who and whom. And when you're in that kind of situation and you're thinking of which one to use, this is something that you can quickly do in your mind and think of what the answer would be. And by that, you can then ask the right question. Lovely. So we have an example here for this. So whom or who did you see? So the answer here would be whom, because we're saying that this person was seen, that person was seen. So I saw her. So you remember him or her is whom. But just so you know, very, very often in English, we will actually use who in this sentence. So don't be alarmed if you hear people using who in this sentence. It is very common. It's just something that people have started doing over time. Just know whom, because it will mean that you can use the proper grammar, and over time you can choose which one you want depending on the people around you and which one you prefer to use in that situation. But whom is the correct one in this situation. Lovely. And the next one is, whom did you see? As the correct answer here, as we just said, because it is I see her. Nice one. And there we go. And remember, of course, that whose is when someone owns something. You can swap whose out for his, her, its, their. You can swap it out for one of these and it will work perfectly. So that is how you remember who, whose, and whom. And I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like, comment, subscribe, and share. And I've been James, and we've been ISpeakSpokeSpoken, and joyfully